couple of people have been asking about Renaissance wax for use on deacs and stuff. So I'm going to try and make this a fairly quick video, a couple of minutes maybe, but I've got a couple of items just to give a rough idea of how it ends up looking like. I've got a brass button cleaning stick, a bit of teak flooring, so you know, can give you an idea of what it's like on wood. And then I've got a cylinder from a Webley revolver that's, I've not done anything with it because I've not had that one that long. And then I've got a mess tin just to give you an idea of what it sort of looks like on some, you know, a bit of corroded, but not heavily corroded metal. It's a microcrystalline wax. It was originally developed by the British Museum for stabilising and preserving artifacts from fingerprints and oils on the skin and contaminants from the air and things. It goes on as a very, very thin layer of wax, and it sort of sets hard, but not in a way that you can see it as a layer on the item. And it just prevents that kind of fingerprint oils, slight damp in the air, those kinds of slow, insidious damage that you sometimes get with artifacts and things. So I've got a couple of pots. I've got a tiny pot, I've got a massive pot. I bought them both at the same time, and I've only used about half of the small pot on about 6 bayonets, 5 or 6 deacs, and a handful of leather and other metal items. So really, didn't really need to buy this massive pot, but anyway, it does come in a couple of different sizes. So I like to use chopped up old bed sheets just because they don't shed fibres. Or cut up t-shirts are quite good as well. But all you do is get a tiny bit of the wax. It's kind of like a semi-solid white consistency. You don't need a huge much, just to smear on your cloth is plenty. And then I'll start with a piece of wood actually, and then you just literally rub it on. And then you don't need to buff it, but I do generally leave it for a minute and give it a little buff. Now that piece of wood has never had any surface treatment on it, so it's completely raw wood. So you can see sort of how that takes. It does lift a little bit of the grime off the surface as well. I'll do it on the button stick now. A little bit more. There we go. So again, this is I've never done anything, never cleaned it, never any brasso, nothing like that. There's a broad arrow stamp there, I've never noticed before. Anyway, so I'll just do it on one of the tangs to sort of show how it goes onto the metal. So again, just a very small coat, very thin. There we go. So, you know, I mean, already you can see there's a bit of a difference. It gives it a slight luster, I'd say, but not any kind of really discernible change the appearance type of way. Let's give it a go on the Webley cylinder. I'll just do sort of half of it, or where shall I do? Let's just do across here where the serial number is, and we can see that there. Ta-da! Right, so it's probably a bit much on there actually. So just give it a get into the groove in the numerals, rub it in. There we go. So I've done it by the serial number so that I can find it later on when I've given it a buff. You can see again it's taken off some soil from the surface, so it does give a little bit of a cleaning action as well. Right, let's try the tin. Then I'll get a clean piece of cloth and I'll give them a buff. I'll tell you what, actually I'll put a little bit on a bit of leather as well. I've got a First World War case over there we can have a look at. So a little bit on there. So on the tin, let's do on the back of the lid. So let's just do a bit. It makes so little difference to the appearance of the item on most things that actually it's a little bit hard to see where I've put it on that. I mean, I can see with my naked eye, but I'm not sure whether it will come across the video. Well, I mean, look how much dirt that's taken off of that, though. So it's definitely, you know, layered something. If we just compare it, perhaps on the other side, the rust is kind of more noticeable colour, but on the back, so it sort of seals and encapsulates a little bit. Right, let's get a bit of this. I'm making a strap for this case. This is a leather galvanometer case, First World War, but it's got a strap missing, so I'm making a leather strap. Just waiting for the hardware to arrive, then I'll stain, dye and age it for a mannequin display. So this is what it's like on leather. I'll just do it over in this corner. So there you go, you can see it has darkened that leather a little bit, but not terribly dramatically. I'll come back to leather in a minute because I've got a couple of other products that I particularly favour for period leather that doesn't rot stitching or cause fungal growth, etc. But let's just get a clean cloth and give a couple of these little wipe and a buff, see what they come up like. So there you go, that doesn't remove it because it has had time to, it sort of dries almost instantly, but barely even noticeable. You'd be hard pressed to know that it was on there. You know, I waxed the bottom one, I haven't waxed the top one. So more or less identical in appearance, which is the whole point, I suppose, because you don't want to, in a museum context, which is who it was originally developed for, dramatically alter the material. The wood, you can see a little bit, there's a little bit of a difference this side from here to here. I've waxed, there you go, you can just see the sheen of it. So it does add a little bit of a sheen, but again, it's not really altered the colour. So it does react differently on different materials. And then the Webley cylinder, you can see that's almost lost a bit of the shine off of it there. So it's where that serial number was. I'm just going to give that a little buff up, which doesn't remove the wax, it just removes the excess that you don't really need on there. There we go, and that is where I've put the wax over those two index notches. And if I flip the thing 180 degrees, you can see that actually there we're on the waxed bit now. It's barely changed the finish. I mean, if I'm honest, it's unnoticeable. And then the tin. Now this is a bit grimy. I've never cleaned this. These are a pair of interwar pattern D-shaped mess tins, like a zinced heavy steel. So again, just a little buff. It's perhaps brought in like a more uniform shine to it, but not really noticeably changed the colour of the material in any way. So yeah, Renaissance wax, superb for preventing deterioration and helping to just preserve stuff. I use it on all my Deacts, all of my other historical items, of which I do have quite a few. Yeah, it's great stuff. I've got a bit of a regime. I just reapply it to the external metalwork once a year or thereabouts when I can remember. I mentioned a couple of other products that I like using. Specifically, these are for leather. So if you've got leather slings and things like that. This, for very dry, British Museum leather dressing, for very dry, brittle old leather, is absolutely superb. And it doesn't dry the leather out long term, and it doesn't rot stitching. It's quite expensive though. Or Renapur, which is quite good for good intact, not such dried old leather. And that's just a nice thing to put on to keep your leather supple, and again to prevent it from overly drying out. Anyway, so yeah, so not so much of a 2-minute video, more of a 10-minute video, but maybe that answers some questions about Renaissance wax. Thanks.